You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I'm here with Mr. Brett Newcomb.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
So, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You don't love psychology today.
No.
Okay.
I think it's Pablo.
Yeah. So tell me more.
It's not good science. It's a magazine, a mass-produced journal that is mainly to market advertising.
Yeah. And it gives people a sense that they know psychology
exactly,
without really
knowing anything.
But a lot of the people that write in it are experts in the field. I mean, they have some
claim to be,
credentials. Well, they have credentials. I don't know.
I've got credentials. I'm not an expert in anything.
Well, you know that I think that that's not true. Yeah. I think that we are actually experts in the field. But this person who wrote this article, Tara Well, I actually like her. So I don't know. I don't know her. No,
okay.
I don't know her personally. I like her professionally. Professionally, she and I kind of operate in a similar intellectual frame, I think.
Oh, she knows all about neuroscience?
She does know a lot about neuroscience.
All right.
That's
her. Does she know anything about therapy?
I don't know. Actually, I don't know if she's ever functioned as a professional therapist. Yeah. But she's the TEDx things that I've seen of her when I've seen her speak, just the way that she thinks about psychology is simpatico with what I think. And so well,
if they think like you think, they must be right.
Well, they agree with me.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're right. But I think we all believe that we're all right, and so if people agree with us,
I'm okay, you're okay.
Think of them as right. But I am hugely into attachment theory, which you know, and I
you're
think
attached to it.
I think you are too.
Well, I believe it. Yeah, I think.
What I'd never thought about was how attachment theory. I'd never made this connection. Nemo.quadnonhabit is on my email. That's the tagline of my...
Because you're a poser.
I pretend like I know Latin, which I don't. But I've always said...
you drove by a Catholic school once.
I used to work in a Catholic school.
There you go.
But I said forever, I would say to people, you can't give away something you don't have.
Yeah.
And Nemo.quadnonhabit is the Latin words for you can't give away something you don't have, which goes back to in Greece, if you tried to sell a piece of property, or in Rome, if you tried to sell a piece of property you didn't own, which happened, then you could be prosecuted under this law. That was the law. You can't sell something that you don't own. But I've always applied that to things like respect or love. If you don't love yourself, you can't really love another person. If you don't respect yourself, you can't really respect another person. And so I've really used that in therapy, but I never thought in terms of how does attachment theory apply to the self until I read this article, and then it just made so much sense to me. I was like, oh yes, this is verbalizing things that I've always thought and always felt, but never put in this kind of language.
Yeah, I can see the discussion around that being a great lunchtime discussion for clinicians. Mm-hmm. We'd all go together and we'd sit around and talk about attachment theory and talk about avoidant and self-avoidant and anxiety and all that. I think that's fun for us. And it might be helpful to frame our understanding of what we see when somebody comes in the room. Mm-hmm. However, I don't know how much utility it has for explaining these concepts to a client. Mm-hmm. So I'm intrigued to see where you're going to go with this.
Well, I think that there's a difference between how clinicians could theoretically understand a thing and how they might present in
absolutely
therapy.
I think that's the point I just made.
So if we're catering the show both to clinicians who may be practicing, but also to lay people, then I think that it's fodder to be able to talk about.
Okay.
But I do understand that you feel as though these are intellectual discussions
or
that may
they're
not
so
be
shallow that they're not worth the time. I mean, quite often they seem to me to be in search of a new term for an old concept. Just because if it sounds new, or people tired of the old terms, and so it's like, oh, that's old hat. Well, I want to spend money for that. What's this year's version? Mm-hmm. What's the top hot topic? Because there are trends in therapy, both for the consumer and the provider, just like there are trends in anything else. So there's a hot diagnosis this year. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a hot diagnosis 2 years ago. So I'm going to pay money. I want to get the new stuff.
Well,
so I think a lot of what's in psychology today is like, for what, years and years ago when America only had 3 TV channels, and everybody watched the same shows every night. I mean, people would set their calendars. I had a girlfriend that wouldn't go out with me on Wednesday night because she had to be home with her family. They all watched Have Gun with Travel together. On Monday nights was Marcus Welby. And the doctors were educated to watch Marcus Welby because on Tuesday they'd have clients show up
come in and
with
say,
Marcus Welby syndrome.
I've got
whatever Marcus dealt with the night before. And so you need to know what you're going to hear, and you need to know what Marcus did about it.
Yeah.
Because that's what they're going to
Because if you treat it differently than Marcus Welby,
like, well, you're not Marcus
you're
Welby.
a quack.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the same thing happens in therapy. I think there are trends and themes that occur among the providers and among the purchasers of therapy.
But so my pushback on that would be this: that John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, who were the progenitors of attachment theory.
I love when you talk like that.
These people are old school. I mean, they're 1950s, 1960s. Right. So this is pretty old hat as far as the attachment theories. The concept of applying that to the self is something.
I remember reading Bowlby about avoidant self-attachment.
Mary Ainsworth was John Bowlby's graduate student.
Yeah.
And so Bowlby was working in the field of attachment theory, and Ainsworth created the original seminal experiment, which is called the Strange experiment that we all read about when we read about attachment theories with the babies and the moms.
Stranger danger.
Yeah. So Ainsworth did the experiment that Bowlby's theory...
Was that the one where they had the camera on the baby's face, and they have a woman standing there? It was the mother, or it was a stranger, but they had the mother's voice saying, hello baby, aren't you cute? I love you, baby. And the anxiety because the baby would see the disconnect, that's not the face that goes with that voice.
So that was later.
Okay.
So the original Strange experiment is that the baby is in the room with a mom.
Yeah.
And the mom is playing with the baby or doing whatever. I mean, they're just interacting.
Right.
And then a stranger walks in and you observe how the baby responds. Then the mom leaves and the stranger's in the room with the baby and you look at how the baby responds. Then the mom comes back and the stranger leaves and you look at how the baby and the mom reunite. And so that's the original Strange experiment and is the basis for the 4 primary attachment styles, which are secure, anxious, insecure, ambivalent, insecure, and or anxious, ambivalent, and avoidant, insecure, and then disorganized.
So what's important for people to know is you don't stare at a 10-month-old baby that you don't regularly interact with.
Well, what's important...
Because you'll create anxiety and fear.
So the goal of the experiment was to judge how secure the baby felt interacting with its environment and interacting with others that it didn't know, because this would help to inform them about the attachment style of the child, and that was based on how the child was acculturated in the family of origin.
So those were somewhat controversial because, again,
At the time, they were hugely controversial.
you're doing human experimentation, and you don't know if you're doing permanent or significant damage to a child when you put them in an experimental zone like that. Bryce Harlow did the same thing about attachment with monkeys, which was also controversial, but differently.
So he took wireframe mothers, and the wireframe mothers would feed the baby monkeys or a cloth-covered wireframe mother, and then after the feeding was done, the monkeys would be put in with either a wireframe mother for comfort or a carpet-framed mother or a carpet-covered mother, and the idea was, which would the babies prefer? The babies always preferred the carpet covered for tactile stimulation, even if the wireframe mother was the mother that fed the baby.
Right.
And so that was another way of, judging attachment. So there's a tactile aspect of attachment, which is very important.
Yeah. I didn't mean to distract you from your original point of view.
But the point here is that what's new in this article is the application of that theory to how we treat ourselves.
So as I read the article, what I understood it to say is that therapists should be aware that when infants go through the attachment stage to become securely attached or insecurely attached, and they develop coping strategies and defense mechanisms and so on, and they grow up and become people, that they can have the same issue in terms of self-connection, self-commitment, that they have with other connections and other commitment.
Correct.
Which is a new way of thinking about it. So maybe if you have someone that's suffering from a lot of anxiety, or that's particularly avoidant for social engagement or social stimulus of one kind or another, it may be because they are avoiding developing secure attachment with themselves.
So in the avoidant, the avoidant attachment style in the adult presentation is oftentimes called dismissive. And basically what that means is that you grow up in an environment where your emotional well-being was not really a priority. And oftentimes, if you displayed emotions, you were criticized for it. And so you learn how to not do that. And so when you get to be an adult...
flat affect or no affect?
I would say flat affect is different than avoidant. You could have an affect. So affect is the way that you present yourself to another person. And a flat affect is like somebody who, seems to not be there, even though they're in the room with you. You could present as flat, but you wouldn't have to.
Right.
But you would like if you and I were married, and
if my wife,
if your wife
experienced me as avoidant, what would she experience?
She would. If she came to you and said, "Brett, we need to have a talk," you would say, "I'm going out to the garage."
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't leave. I wouldn't say that. I would just go away and not be part of the conversation.
However you did that, right? Yes, you would not be a physical part of the conversation about your emotions, because you had been trained as a child that emotions are dangerous, and any time that emotions are brought up,
no, I was trained as a child. We need to have a talk. Was always dangerous.
Yes.
So go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so be there for the result, whatever it is.
So if that's the way that you interact with other adults, is that you are avoidant or dismissing, that's the way you act with yourself. And so whenever you think about, do I have the right to have this opinion? You're going to say, no, I don't have the right to have this opinion. Why? I'm not smart enough to have this opinion. You're going to minimize, and because oftentimes
having an opinion would stake out some territory, and that would put me at risk. Okay. If I just stay nebulous and invisible, I'm safer.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you're not only going to interact with other people that way, you're going to interact with yourself that way. And so people that
So when you say, how do you feel about this, or what do you really want, or what do you want to do with your life? I say, well, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because if I say, I want to be an organ grinder, then somebody's going to come back, well, that's really stupid.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's run to our break, and when we come back,
all right,
tell you a story. If you've gotten this far into the show, then obviously you find the show to be worthwhile, beneficial, maybe even helpful. And so I just wanted to say, if you've gotten this far into the show and you want to help us out, even if you don't want to help us out, just do it anyway. Go to Apple Podcasts and rate us and leave a review. That is super helpful. Subscribe to the show on YouTube and hit the bell icon so that you get notifications when new shows drop. That stuff is really, really helpful for us. And I know that Mr. Brett agrees.
Absolutely. Reviews are positive. Positive reviews are more positive, but negative ones are as well, because it helps you decide how to focus and how whatever you're intending to say is being heard.
And the secret is the algorithm doesn't care whether the review's positive or negative.
As our friend Mike Norton says regularly, feedback is a gift.
If it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Okay, we're back. This isn't really a story, but earlier, before we went on mic, you were apologizing to me for laughing at an interaction that my wife and I had this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, so tell the story.
You were having a conversation with your wife. She was about to leave, and you asked her a question as she was going out the door. And she stopped, and then she came all the way across the room to stand next to you before she answered the question. And before she answered the question, her eyes went out of focus, and she started looking at your beard, and she reached up and grabbed the end of your beard and pulled something off of it, which I now know was a dog hair from your Irish setter. And then she dealt with that, and then she turned around and answered your question.
Yeah.
And I started laughing when that happened, because to me, that's like monkeys in the zoo grooming each other.
Right.
And in my experience in life, women do that much more regularly than men do.
Yeah.
So, I've had the groomed experience any number of times in the middle of a conversation that I'm paying attention to.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, somebody's, what's that on your forehead, and scratching you or touching you or popping a zit or whatever they do, because they get distracted by it.
Yeah.
You said, I didn't take that personally. It didn't offend me. I didn't call it rattle any waves, which was the point I was trying to make. I'm sorry if I offended you by laughing at your interaction with your wife. But I understand, because I've seen you in private and in public. I know that someone needs to groom you.
But the point being, I was not offended by that. But
well, you wouldn't be, because you're self-avoidant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in avoidant personality style, if you said to somebody, "Oh, I didn't mean to offend you," their natural response would be, "Oh, I wasn't offended," even if they were.
Yeah.
Yes, and so we all know people,
but they typically wouldn't know. If they're self-avoidant, they wouldn't know that they were offended until down the road, days later. Or an hour later, or a half hour later, be like, damn.
Or they might not ever know that they're offended.
They might not
because their natural inclination is to be self-deprecating.
Yeah.
So self-deprecation is a manifestation. Oh, I guess I should explain that. So self-deprecation is when you're always putting yourself down.
Okay.
And that is a function of what we're talking about, of this avoidant self kind of attachment style.
Well, sometimes we announce that in advance of a situation. Well, I'm not very good at this.
Yeah.
We get called to play on the team. You catch first base. Well, I'm not very good at this. I've never played baseball. And maybe you are very good at it. But that way you pre-orient the crowd to accept any mistakes that you might make. So if they throw you the ball and you drop it, or you don't tag the base and tag the runner out, they can say, well, he said he didn't know how to play. Mm-hmm. Instead of saying, oh, he's really bad.
So I've always conceptualize
I don't sing very well.
Self-deprecation as an insecurity, and I think it is. I think that because I think that if you if you have an insecure attachment style, by definition you're insecure. But this article really helped me to conceptualize that self-deprecation is the outward manifestation of this avoidant self-attachment style. So when you see that in therapy, when you see people being self-deprecating, or they're telling you stories about how they're self-deprecating, that is saying to us that they have this avoidant self-attachment style, and it's just another way for us to help us understand.
It's a possibility that we should consider.
Yes.
It's not an absolute.
It's not an absolute, yes.
Because I strategically prefer that someone underestimate me.
But I think that you and I believe probably most people who are practicing psychotherapists and are making money at it, because you'll get drummed out of the profession if you're not good. Although I guess there are some
It's
people who
a
are not good.
market-driven economy.
Yeah.
Is the phrase I always use.
But most people will be able to infer the difference between what is self-deprecation based on this insecure or avoidant self-attachment style, and what's strategic. Like, I know when you're being self-deprecating that you're doing that for show.
Like when I get off the ski lift and say I'm not really good at this.
Yes.
Beat your butt down.
And then you ski down backwards.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've been known to do that.
Yes, you've been known to do that many times. So I think I would know in therapy if somebody's being self-deprecating for some playful reason, or if that's just their natural inclination.
Maybe over time, if you had several different encounters with them, I don't know that you would know in the first session.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But hopefully I don't see somebody one time and that's it.
Well, yeah, exactly. Obviously, they need help.
So, based on this conversation that we're having, do you agree with the things that are said in the article, or would you revise that in some way?
As I understand the article, I would agree with it. I think it is a valid process for the therapist to go through in assessing the client that he has in front of him. Mm-hmm. Are we dealing with a learned behavior that disrupts your relationship with others? Are we dealing with a learned behavior that disrupts your relationship with you? Mm-hmm. Because depending on what we decide, depending on what I decide, I'm going to pursue it down a particular avenue. If I find out later I'm wrong, then I have to move it to a different avenue. But that's the way therapy works.
Yeah, you have to test theories.
Yeah, and find out what works and what doesn't work. But yeah, I think that's an alert to have that might help you move the client more quickly to a better place.
And one of the things that I've always done in dealing with clients who present some insecurity, especially if it is based in their own sense of self, is to try and help them with cognitive behavioral means by, like, I tell people, tell me 3 things you like about yourself. Oh, I can't tell you 3 things I like about myself. Okay, your homework then, because this is an example where I would give homework, is to come up with 3 things you like about yourself, but you can't ask somebody else, because you've asked somebody else, then it's their thing. You won't sincerely really trust it. So just come back and with however many things you can. And then over time, we can build that repertoire, and then I have them write them down on note cards so they can carry them around with them, pull them out and look at them. And one of the things that I will have people do is to use a second mirror to write in wax pencil on the mirror that they look in backwards, I'm a good person, or whatever their affirmation is, so that when they look at themselves in the mirror like an ambulance, they'll see it right side. And I've always said that is really powerful, to see positive affirmations that you have written on the mirror with your face in them is really powerful. And I know that is a very emotionally powerful tool if people will do it. This gal talks about, I shouldn't say gal, this individual, this psychologist talks about mirror meditation. This is the point at which I think the article gets a little too cute, is like she's made up this mirror meditation. I've been doing this for 35 years. I don't claim it. Yeah, right. But I think it is very powerful.
Yeah,
but I do think that she's onto something here, that when we're talking about this avoidant self-attachment style, that if you can tolerate saying positive things about yourself while looking at yourself in the mirror.
Like Stuart Smalley. By golly, people like me.
Well, hopefully more impactful, more...
The argument in the article is that if you can't sit quietly and meditate in front of a mirror, if you distract yourself and disrupt your meditative flow, that's a problem, and that you should learn how to do it. And that if you become self-aware, you'll recognize that you're making a grocery list, or you're thinking about your calendar, or you're wondering what color to paint the ceiling, instead of just being present with yourself. But that's the whole meditation movement. You don't need a mirror to do that.
Right.
They teach you the same thing when they teach you to meditate.
And where I think that she doesn't go as far as I would go.
There is value to all of that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I would even say looking at yourself in the mirror and giving yourself positive affirmations. If I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm saying to myself, I'm a good person, I like me,
I'm looking
am a
at
good
the man
baseball
in the mirror.
player.
I say you've got to change your ways. Michael Jackson had it.
Well, but then you're injecting, some kind of value statement. I wouldn't
Well,
even.
no, you're hearing the song and you're
Yeah.
seeing Michael Jackson, and that's a distraction from meditating with yourself and being
gotcha.
still. 'Cause she mentions not going off and playing songs in your head.
Yeah.
watching
Gotcha.
Did you read the article?
I read the article. I didn't make that connection.
Okay.
I didn't make the connection to Michael Jackson, but
How do you miss it? If you're pop culture aware, you got to know, man. Looking at the man in the mirror.
I don't know that I'm pop culture aware.
Oh, that's such a shortcoming.
So if I don't know enough about pop culture, I can't do therapy.
Not with any modern folk.
Yeah.
You have to limit yourself to old people.
I know that Elon Musk owns Twitter now.
There you go. See, you got some.
Yeah. So I don't
You'll be
know.
rushing out to buy a Starlink to put in your Tesla, or does it come with one?
Oh, it has to come with one, doesn't
Wouldn't
it?
you think so? That's vertical trust, isn't it?
I mean, absolutely.
There you go.
I mean, I don't think I shouldn't have to buy the paint separately.
So how could someone do you a solid?
Well, first off, I would not say solid. I would say do us a favor. And the best way to do that, number one, if they wanted to get in contact with us for any reason and either let us know something that they liked about something we said, or had questions about something we said, or would like for us to discuss something that they have on their minds.
Send us a rabbit to chase.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that is psychwithmike.com. You can.
And some people have done it, from as far away as Australia.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. And if you're Sarah, then you know who you are. If you don't know that reference, then you don't know Sarah. So
Unless you're self-avoidant.
yeah. If you wanted to do us a favor, what you would do is go on the Apple Podcasts and find @PsychWithMike and leave us a rating and a review. That helps other people find the show, and that's super, super helpful.
Especially in the zone of, damn, these guys are good.
Absolutely.
Everybody should listen.
It should be ubiquitous.
There you go.
Required listening. And you could find us on the YouTubes, on the interwebs @PsychWithMike, and subscribe to the show. That is really helpful for us because it lets YouTube know that people are enjoying the show and that the audience is growing. But the music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue, and if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.